तव कथामृतम् तप्तजीवनम् कविभिरीडितम् कल्मषापहम् श्रवणमङ्गलम् श्रीमदाततम् भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः।
Om 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 Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibiriditam Kalmashapam Shravana Mangalam Shrimadatam Bhuvi Grunanti Ye Bhurida Jana. We are studying the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna and English page 973. We have come to the end of conversations of 23rd April 1886. And now a few lines have remained. In English, date is not given, but the next day is said. And in Bengali, clearly, page 1061, last line. There is a subheading, Thakur Shri Ramakrishna or Bhakter Sri Putra. Paradin Shanivar, 24th April. So it is evidently 24th April. The next day, M came to the garden house accompanied by his wife and a son. The boy was 7 years old. It was at the master's request that he brought his wife, who was almost mad with grief owing to the death of one of her sons, perhaps little elder to that son. That day, the master several times allowed M's wife the privilege of waiting on him, serving on him. Her welfare seemed to occupy his attention a great deal. Kindness, huh? In the evening, the Holy Mother came to the master's room to feed him. So in the evening, so the wife was there in the day. M's wife accompanied her with a lamp. Remember, no electricity, so lamp. The master tenderly asked her many questions about her household. He requested her to come again to the garden house and spend a few days with the Holy Mother, not forgetting to ask her bring her baby daughter. When the master had finished his meal, M's wife removed the plates. He chatted with her a few minutes. So all kindness to M's wife, that much only is that day. About 9 o'clock in the evening, Sri Ramakrishna was seated in his room with the devotees. He had a garland of flowers around his neck. He told M that he had requested his wife to spend a few days at the garden house with the Holy Mother. His kindness touched M's heart. M was fanning him. The master took the garland from his neck and said something to himself. Then, in a very benign mood, he gave the garland to M. So, that is the last event mentioned in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Now, Sri Ramakrishna passed away on the 15th of August that year. So, during those last days, M has noted down, but had no heart to bring it out, expanding it and bringing before the public because of Thakur's delicate health and the pain, excruciating pain of cancer. Now, after this, we are following the English book. And in English, it is continued, telling that chapter 52 after their passing away. Now, in Bengali, immediately after this, what we read starts Parishishta appendix, Vivekananda in America and in Europe, Sri Ramakrishna or Narendra Swami Vivekananda. This is not at all included in the English Gospel. No occasion also. In those days, in the minds of some people, including M, I should say, that Swami Vivekananda did not preach about Sri Ramakrishna's incarnationhood, one thing. Secondly, Sri Ramakrishna's teaching and Swami Vivekananda's teaching are different, second thing. Because of this, M has quoted at length Swamiji's lectures and corresponding Sri Ramakrishna's teaching. This goes on for page up to page 1097, from 1063 to 1097, about 30 pages. It is not Sri Ramakrishna or his conversations, so not necessary. Now we know well that they are spoken in one language only. And Swamiji did not talk much about Sri Ramakrishna in America, is also not correct. He may not have publicly talked much, because if he mentions a person, they will not attend. Sri Ramakrishna has talked about Vedanta, Hinduism in general, India in general, and every aspect of India, Indian culture, Indian society. And when people asked him about Sri Ramakrishna, he did tell them privately. And later on he has said he has initiated hundreds of disciples in America with the mantra. So those things are well known now. No need to show that Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda teachings are not different. Though some people even today may harbor that. Now, after that in the Bengali, Keshavar said Dakshineshwar Mandire. This is also an appendix, and in the English version also it is there little later. Then Surendra Badite Manamohan, this also is there in English a little later. And Sri Ramakrishna in Rajendra's house, this also is given a little later. Sri Ramakrishna and Sri Yud Bankim, this we have already read. Why it was brought to appendix, we had discussed at that time. So this we have already read. Now after this, in the Bengali, Parishishta continued, and we get Varahanagar Math. This is page 1128. So please open that page. Those who have Bengali book, please open page 1128, because in English, Swami Nikhilananji, the translator, has thought that in the tapasya of Sri Ramakrishna's immediate disciples in Varahanagar Math is nothing but a continuation it has come back. So, it is just the continuation of Sri Ramakrishna's Leela. How it affected his disciples, how they lived according to what Sri Ramakrishna taught them to live. This forms the next chapter without mentioning appendix as a continuation, calling it chapter 52 after the passing away. So now Bengali page 1128, we come English continuation, page 975. So we read there. In the beginning, date is not given. Introduction. Sri Ramakrishna passed away on Sunday, August 15, 1886, plunging his devotees and disciples into a sea of grief. They were like men in a shipwreck, but a strong bond of love held them together, and they found assurance and courage in each other's company. They could not enjoy the friendship of worldly people and would talk only of their master. Shall we not behold him again? This was the one theme of their thought. They know that Sri Ramakrishna has not died. His Leela has not come to an end. He might have withdrawn his gross body, but he continues with his subtle body. And so they were eager through their tapasya to see him again and again. That is the continuation. This was one theme of their thought and the one dream of their sleep. Alone, they wept for him. Walking in the streets of Calcutta, they were engrossed in the thought of him. The master had once said to him, "It becomes difficult for me to give up the body when I realize that after my death you will wander about weeping for me." Some of them thought, "He is no longer in this world. How surprising that we still enjoy living. We could give up our bodies if we like, but still we do not." So these are the various thoughts. Time and again, Sri Ramakrishna had told them that God reveals himself to his devotees if they yearn for him and call on him with whole souled devotion. So he was God for them. They want to see him. He had assured them that God listens to the prayer of a sincere heart. The young unmarried disciples of the Master who belonged to his inner circle had attended on him day and night at the Kashipur Garden House. After his passing away, most of them returned to their families against their own wills. They had not yet formally renounced the world. For a short while, they kept their family names, that pre-monastic names. But Sri Ramakrishna had made them renounce the world mentally. He himself had initiated several of them into the monastic life, giving them the ochre cloths of sannyasis. So he has done so many things. Only officially, they have not yet done that. 2 or 3 of the master's attendants had no place to go. Mahapurush Maharaj, Latu, and the elder Gopal. There's no place to go. To them, the large-hearted Surendra said, "Brothers, where will you go? Let us rent a house. You will live there and make it our master's shrine, and we householders shall come there for consolation. How can we pass all our days and nights with our wives and children in the world?" Even householders are feeling like that. I used to spend a sum of money for the master at Kashipur. I shall gladly give it now for your expenses, including the rent. Accordingly, he rented a house for them at Varanagar in the suburb of Calcutta, and this place became gradually transformed into a mutt or monastery. For the first few months, Surendra contributed 30 rupees a month. As the other members joined the monastery one by one, he doubled his contribution, which he later increased to 100 rupees. The monthly rent for the house was 11 rupees. The cook received 6 rupees a month that day. The rest was spent for food. The younger Gopal, there was another Gopal, Hutko Gopal, suddenly used to come and suddenly go away. The younger Gopal brought the master's bed and other articles of daily use from the garden house at Kashipur. The Brahmin who had been cook at Kashipur was engaged for the new monastery. The first permanent member was the elder Gopal. Sharad spent the nights there. In the beginning, Sharad, Shashi, Baburam, Niranjan, and Kali used to visit the monastery every now and then, according to their convenience. Tarak, who had gone to Vrindavan following the master's death, returned to Calcutta after a few months and soon became a permanent member of the monastery. We know that when the house was fixed, Swamiji had returned to Mahapurush Maharaj that as soon as I send you wire, you please come. And as soon as the house was got, he had sent a wire to Mahapurush Maharaj and he had immediately come. Rakhal, Jogin, Latu, and Kali were living at Vrindavan with the Holy Mother when the monastery was started. Kali returned to Calcutta within a month, Rakhal after a few months, and Jogin and Latu after a year. The householder devotees frequently visited the monastic brothers and spent hours with them in meditation and study. So it is just a continuation of Shri Ramakrishna. Rakhal, Niranjan, Sharad, Shashi, Baburam, Jogin, Tarak, Kali, and Latu renounced the world for good. Sarada Prasanna and Subodh joined them some time later. Gangadhar, who was very much attached to Narendra, visited the mutt regularly. It was he who taught the brothers the hymn sung at the evening worship service in the Shiva temple at Benares. He had gone to Tibet to practice austerity. Now, having returned, he lived at the monastery. Hari, who was at first only a visitor at the monastery, soon embraced the monastic life and thus completed the list of the master's sannyasi disciples. Here, a footnote is given. The monastic names of the master's intimate disciples who renounced the world soon after his death were as follows: Narendra, Swami Vivekananda, Rakhal, Swami Brahmananda, Jogin, Swami Yogananda, Niranjan, Swami Niranjanananda, Latu, Swami Adbhutananda, Baburam, Swami Premananda, Tarak, Swami Shivananda, Hari, Swami Turiyananda, Sharad, Swami Saradananda, Shashi, Swami Ramakrishnananda, Kali, Swami Abhedananda, Gangadhar, Swami Akhandananda, Elder Gopal, Swami Advaita Ananda, Sarada Prasanna, Swami Trigunatitananda Subodh, Swami Subodhananda. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 names are mentioned here. You can add 16, Swami Vivekananda. He was an engineer and he was serving for some time to provide for his mother, and then later on he joined. That completes 16. Nagpur Math, Narendra. The new monastery became known among the master's devotees. Oh, where? No. We're reading the text. That was footnote. Surendra was indeed a blessed soul. It was he who laid the foundation of the great order later associated with Sri Ramakrishna's name. His devotion and sacrifice made it possible for those earnest souls to renounce the world for the realization of God. Through him, Sri Ramakrishna made it possible for them to live in the world as embodiments of his teachings, the renunciation of woman and God, and the realization of God. The brothers, they are all like brothers. The brothers lived at the mat like orphan boys. Sometimes they would not have the money to pay their house rent. Sometimes they would have no food in the monastery. Surendra would come and settle all these things. He was the big brother of the monks. Later on, when they thought of his genuine love, the members of the first mutt shed tears of gratitude. The new monastery became known among the master's devotees as the Varanagar Mutt. Narendra, Rakhal, and the other young disciples were filled with intense renunciation. One day, Rakhal's father came to the mutt and asked Rakhal to return home. Why do you take the trouble to come here? Rakhal said to him, I am very happy here. Please pray to God that you may forget me and I may forget you too. So he cut off the connection with the house like that. The young disciples said to each other, we shall never return to the worldly life. The Master enjoined upon us the renunciation of woman and gold. How can we go back to our families? Shashi had taken charge of the daily worship in the mat. The Master's relics had been brought from Balram's house. What they did, some of the disciples, including Ram, said that you cannot keep relics because you are wandering here and there. I shall keep. And that he made ready at the new house he had built in uh, Kankurgachi. Now, they did not want to leave those ashes and bones, the relics. So, what they did, Shashi Maharaj especially, Niranjan Maharaj, in the night, they removed the main part, the bones and some ashes in another pot. And Balram Babu was always in support of the renouncing people. So they sent that to Balram's house and it was kept there. The remaining ashes were ceremoniously engraved in Ram Datta's house in Kakurgach. So that is the history. And that's why it is telling the master's relics had been brought from Balram's house and Shri Ram Krishna was worshipped daily in the worship hall. Narendra supervised the household. He was the leader of the monastery. He would often tell his brothers, disciples, the selfless actions enjoyed in the Gita are worship, japa, meditation, and so on, and not worldly duties. The brothers at the mat depended on him for their spiritual inspiration. He said to them, "We must practice sadhana, otherwise we shall not be able to realize God." He and his brother disciples, filled with an ascetic spirit, devoted themselves day and night to the practice of spiritual discipline. Their one goal in life was the realization of God. They followed to their heart's contents their injunctions prescribed in the Vedas, Puranas, and the Tantras for an ascetic life. They spent their time in japa and meditation and study of the scriptures. Whenever they would fail to experience the divine presence, that means they used to feel that always, they would feel as if they were on the rack. They would practice austerity, sometimes alone under trees, sometimes in a cremation ground, sometimes on the bank of the Ganges. Again, sometimes they would spend the entire day in the meditation room of the monastery in japa and contemplation. Sometimes they would gather to sing and dance in the rapture of delight. All of them, and Narendra particularly, were consumed with the desire to see God. Now and then they would say to each other, "Shall we not starve ourselves to death to see God?" So this has been given as the general introduction to Varanagar Math and life therein. Now we follow dates. So Monday, February 21, 1887. From August, we are jumping to February. Narendra, Rakhal, Niranjan, Sharad, Shashi, Kali, Baburam, Tarak, and Sarada Prasanna were living in the monastery. All day the members had been fasting in the observation of Shivaratri. That is what they had done in Kashipur also. So here also they are following. Footnote says the night of Shiva. On this day, the devotees observe fast and spend the whole night in meditation, prayer, and other spiritual exercises. Night. Sharad, Kali, Niranjan, and Sarada were planning to go to Puri the following Saturday on a pilgrimage to the sacred Jagannath. Jogin and Lattu were at Vrindavan and had not yet seen the new place. Narendra had gone to Calcutta that morning to look after a lawsuit in which his family had been involved since the death of his father. At 9 o'clock in the morning, M arrived at the mat. Tarak saw him and began to sing in praise of Shiva, Rakhal joining him. There Shiva dances, striking both his cheeks, and they resound ba ba boom. We can go back to Bengali here. शिव शंकर वम वम भोला कैलासपति महाराज राज उड़े श्रृंग की ख्याल गले व्याल माल लोचन विशाल लाले लाल भाले चंद्र शोभे सुंदर विराजे. Hindi song. Just description of Shiva. Dimmy, dimmy, dimmy sounds his damaru drum. A garland of skulls from his neck is hanging. In his matted locks, the Ganges hisses. Fire shoots from his mighty trident. Round his waist, a serpent glitters, and on his brow, the moon is shining. Okay. Rakhal and Tarak danced as they sang. Narendra had recently composed the song. So the song is composed by Narendra. Tathaya nache bhola, dime 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 damaru baje. all that. Shashi finished the morning worship in the shrine. Sharad then sang about Shiva to the accompaniment of the Tanpura. Narendra had just returned from Calcutta. He had not yet taken his bath. Kali asked him, "What about the lawsuit?" "Why should you bother about it?" Narendra replied sharply. He did not want anybody to think of that. Absolutely essential, so he is doing that. Narendra was smoking and talking to him and the others. He said, "Nothing can be achieved in spiritual life without the renunciation of woman and God." So, just continuation of Thakur. Woman is the doorway to hell. All people are under the control of women. The cases of Shiva and Krishna are quite different. Shiva turned his consort into his servant. Sri Krishna no doubt led a householder's life, but how unattached he was, how quickly he renounced Vrindavan and the gopis. So he finds renunciation, unattachment total in Shiva and Krishna. Rakha. And how he renounced Dwarka too, where he was the king. So he added one. Narendra took his bath in the Ganges and returned to the monastery. He carried his wet cloth and towel in his hand. Sarda prostrated himself before Narendra. He too had been fasting on account of the Shivratri. He was going to the Ganges for his bath. Narendra entered the worship room and prostrated himself before the picture of Sri Ramakrishna, who was daily worshipped there as the deity. For a few minutes, he was absorbed in meditation. The devotees assembled in a room and began to converse. The talk turned to Bhavanath. Narendra said people like him live the worm like worms in the wood. It was afternoon. Arrangements were being made to worship Shiva in the evening. Leaves of the bel tree were gathered for the worship. Bel wood was chopped for the homa. In the evening, Shashi, who was in charge of the worship at the monastery, burned incense before the pictures of the various gods and goddesses. Master is describing what I should say, very vividly, so that all of us can become a part of that Shivratri. The worship of Shiva was to take place under the bel tree in the monastery compound. The deity was to be worshipped 4 times. That is the rule of Shivratri. During the 4 watches of the night, the brothers assembled under the bel tree. Bhupati and M were present also. Bhupati was an household disciple who had found him in gospel. One of the young members of the Math was in charge of the worship. Kali was reading from the Gita. Now and then he argued with Narendra. That was always his nature. Kali. I alone am everything. I create, preserve, and destroy. Narendra. How is it possible for, what is there, to create some missing letters? Let me see. It should be Ame Srishti Kochik Koi. How is it possible for you to create Vimekshi? Another power creates through me. So you has been transferred to me. And another power creates through me. Our various actions, even our thoughts, are caused by that power. So he continuously thinks of God or the ultimate reality. Aim to himself. The master used to say, as long as a man feels that it is he who meditates, he is under the jurisdiction of the Adda Shakti. Shakti must be acknowledged. And that is, you must acknowledge that God sports through his Shakti. Kali reflected in silence a few moments and then said, the actions you are talking about are illusory. Okay. There is not even any such thing as thought. The very idea of these things makes me laugh. Narendra. The I that is implied in I am he is not this ego. Very clearly understand, huh? Many people think this ego can become Brahma. No, no, no. It is that which remains after one eliminates mind, body, and so on. What remains is that I who is identical with Brahman. After completing the recital of the Gita, Kali chanted Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Narendra and the other devotees stood up and circled round and round the tree, singing and dancing. Now and then they chanted in chorus, Shiva Guru, Shiva Guru. So they are fully intoxicated with that spirit of Shiva. It was midnight, the 14th day of the dark fortnight of the moon. Pitch darkness filled all the quarters. Men, birds, and animals were all hushed into silence. The young sannyasis were clad in gerua robe, ochre robes. The word Shiva Guru, chanted in their full-throated voices, rose into the infinite sky like the rumblings of rain clouds and disappeared in the indivisible Satchidananda. That is Master Maha's poetic imagination. The worship was over. The sun, about to rise, was painting the eastern horizon crimson. In this sacred twilight, the conjunction of night and day, the holy Brahma Muhurta it is called, the young worshippers finished their baths in the Ganges. It was morning. The devotees went to the shrine room, prostrated themselves before the deity, and gradually assembled in the big hall. Narendra was clad in a new ochre cloth. The bright orange color of his apparel blended with the celestial luster of his face and body, every pore of which radiated a divine light. His countenance was filled with fiery brilliance, and yet touched with the tenderness of love. Fiery brilliance, and yet the touch of the tenderness of love. He appeared to all as a bubble that had risen up in the ocean of absolute existence and bliss, and assumed a human body to help in the propagation of his master's message. So he did not appear like a man, a bubble arose for the propagation of his master's message. All eyes were fixed on him. Narendra was then just 24 years old, the very age at which the great Chaitanya had renounced the word similarity. Balram had sent fruit and sweets to the monastery for the devotees' breakfast. Rakhal, Narendra, and a few others partook of the refreshments. After eating one or two morsels, some of them cried out, Blessed indeed is Balram, or laughed. So they are blissful inside, no moroseness, though tapasya is very hard. Narendra now began to joke like a child. He was imitating Sri Ramakrishna. He put a sweet into his mouth and stood still as if in samadhi. All divine scenes to watch. Master Masha has given us. His eyes remained unwinking. A devotee stepped forward and pretended to hold him up by the hand lest he should drop to the ground. Narendra closed his eyes. A few minutes later, with the sweetmeat still in his mouth, he opened his eyes and drawled out, I am all right, just like Sri Ramakrishna. All laughed loudly. So they're filled with Sri Ramakrishna's spirit. Refreshments were now given to everyone. M looked on at this wonderful mart of happiness. The devotees shouted joyfully, Jai Guru Maharaj. Guru means teacher, Sri Ramakrishna Maharaj is a honorific addition. Maharaj literally will mean the emperor or the great king. Now we come to Friday, March 25, 1887. So from February, we are going to March. Master has come again. M arrived at the Varanagar Math to visit his brother disciple. Devendra accompanied him. M had been coming to the monastery very frequently and now and then had spent a day or two. The previous week he had spent 3 days at the Math. He was very eager to observe the spirit of intense renunciation of these young men. It was evening. M intended to spend the night in the monastery. Shashi lighted the lamp in the worship room and chanted the name of God. Next, he burnt incense before all the pictures of gods and goddesses in the various rooms. The evening service began. Shashi conducted the worship. Devendra stood with folded hands and sang the hymn of the Arati. When the worship was over, Narendra and M became engaged in conversation. Narendra was recalling the various meetings with Chiram. Narendra. One day, during one of my early visits, the master, in an ecstatic mood, said to me, You have come. How amazing. I said to myself, it is as if he had known me a long time. Then he said to me, Do you ever see light? I replied, Yes, sir. Before I fall asleep, I feel something like a light revolving near my forehead. M. Do you see it even now? Narendra. I used to see it frequently. In Jadumarek's garden house, the master one day touched me and muttered something to himself. I became unconscious. The effect of the touch lingered with me a month like an intoxication. 1 month touch. When he heard that a proposal had been made about my marriage, he wept, holding the feet of the image of Kali. With tears in his eyes, he prayed to the Divine Mother, Oh Mother, please upset the whole thing. Don't let Narendra be drowned. Hmm. After my father's death, my mother and my brothers were starving. When the master met Annada Guha one day, Narendra's friend, he said to him, Narendra's father has died. His family is in a state of great privation. It would be good if his friends helped him now with money. After another had left, I scolded him. I said, Why did you say all those things to him? Thus rebuked, he wept and said, Alas, for you, your sake, I could beg from door to door. He tamed us by his love. Don't you think so? M. There is not the slightest doubt about it. His love was utterly unselfish. Hmm. Narendra. One day when I was alone with him, he said something to me. Nobody else was present. Please don't repeat it to anyone here. M. No, I shall not. What did he say? So now it has come out in gospel. Narendra, he said, it is not possible for me to exercise occult powers, but I shall do so through you. What do you say? No, I replied. You can't do that. I used to laugh at his words. You must have heard all those things from him. I told him that his visions of God were all hallucinations of his mind. He said to me, I used to climb to the roof of the kuti and cry, O devotees, where are you all? Come to me, O devotee, I am about to die. I shall certainly die if I do not see you. And the Divine Mother told me, the devotees will come. You see, everything is turning out to be true. What else could I say? I kept quiet. One day he closed the door of his room and said, Devendra Babu, and he said to Devendra Babu and Girish Babu, referring to me, he will not keep his body if he is told about who he is. Yes, we have heard that. Many a time he repeated the same thing to us too. Once you came to know about your true self in Nirvikalpa Samadhi at the Kashipur Garden House. Isn't that true, Narendra? Yes, in that experience, I felt that I had no body. I could see only my face. The master was in the upstairs room. I had the experience downstairs. I was weeping. I said, what has happened to me? The elder Gopal went to the master's room and said, Narendra is crying. When I saw the master, he said to me, now you have known, but I am going to keep the key with me. I told to him, I said to him, what is it that happened to me? Turning to the devotees, he said, he will not keep his body if he knows who he is. But I have put a veil over his eyes. One day he said to me, you can't see Krishna in your heart if you want. You can see Krishna in your heart if you want. I replied, I don't believe in Krishna or any such nonsense. Both M and Narendra laughed because of this drastic comment. I have noticed a peculiar thing. Some men, objects, or places make me feel as if I had seen them before in a previous birth. They appear familiar to me. One day I went to Sharad's house in Calcutta on Amherst Street. Immediately I said to Sharad, this house seems familiar to me. It seems to me that I have known the rooms, the passages, and the rest of the house for many, many days. Later on, he found that it was not his past life, but what he had to experience in this life, he had seen as a cinema at some point. I used to follow my own whims in everything I did. The master never interfered. You know that I became a member of the Sadharan Brahma Samaj? Yes, I know that. Naren. The master knew that women attended the meetings of the Brahma Samaj. A man cannot meditate with women sitting in front of him. Therefore, he criticized the meditation of the Brahma Samaj, but he didn't object to my going there. But one day he said to me, don't tell Rakhal about your being a member of the Brahma Samaj, or he will feel like becoming one. M. You have greater strength of mind. That is why the master didn't prevent you going to the Samaj. Your strength of mind will not fall a prey to all those things. Narendra, I have attained my present state of mind as a result of much suffering and pain. We have not passed through any such suffering. I now realize that without trials and tribulations, one cannot resign oneself to God or depend on Him absolutely. So that is the main point. The more problems we get, we should bless them, because then only we know that we have no strength. It is God alone. So that realization comes by suffering. One should never be afraid of suffering. Well, X is so modest and humble. He is totally self-effacing. Can you tell me how I can develop humility? Somebody is mentioning without name, Narendra. M. Speaking about your ego, the master said, whose ego is it? Narendra. What did he mean? There is a incident. M. A friend one day said to Radhika, you are egotistic. That is why you insulted Krishna. Whereupon another friend said to the first, yes, Radhika is egotistic, no doubt. But whose ego is it? What she meant was that Radha was egotistic because she regarded Krishna as her Lord. It was Krishna himself who kept that ego in Radha. So that is the meaning. In Bengali, there is a pun on that word. Ahankar. Ahankar means ego. Ahankar, whose ego it is. What the master meant was that it is God alone who has kept this ego in you so that he may accomplish many things through you. Narendra, but my ego loudly proclaims to all that I have no suffering. Ego proclaims to all I have no suffering. So that is the thing. M smiling. You may loudly proclaim it, if that be your sweet will. The conversation turned to other devotees. Narendra, the master said about Vijay Goswami, he is knocking at the door. M. That is to say, he has not yet entered the room. At Shampukur, Vijay said to the master, I saw you at Dhaka in this tangible form, in this very body. You were there too. You were in Calcutta also and Dhaka also. Narendra, Devendra Babu and Ram Babu want to renounce the world. They are trying hard. Ram Babu told me privately that he would give up the world after 2 years. After 2 years, after making provision for his children, Narendra. Besides, he will rent his present house and buy a small house. Other relatives will arrange his daughter's marriage. M. Gopal is in an exalted state of the mind, isn't he? Nitya Gopal. Narendra. What do you mean? M. So much emotion, so much weeping, and such exaltation in the name of God. Narendra. Does mere emotion make a man spiritually great? Youngsters like Kali, Sharad, Shashi, and Sarada are more spiritual than Gopal. How great their renunciation is! Gopal does not accept the Nitya Gopal, huh? Does not accept the master, does he? That is true. The master remarked that Gopal did not belong to the circle of his devotees. But I saw him show great reverence for Sri Ramakrishna. Narendra, what did you see? At that time, I was just becoming acquainted with Sri Ramakrishna. One day, after the meeting of the devotees in his room had broken up, I came out and saw Gopal on the footpath, kneeling with folded hands before the master. The moon was shining brightly overhead. It was the red path, sprinkled with black dust, just outside the long veranda north of the master's room. Nobody else was there. It appeared to me that Gopal had taken shelter at Sri Ramakrishna's feet and the master was encouraging him. Narendra, I didn't see it. Further, the master used to say, Gopal is in the state of a Paramahansa. But I also distinctly remember his forbidding Gopal to be intimate with woman devotees. Many a time he warned him about it. Narendra. Speaking to me about Gopal the Master, why, if Gopal was a real Paramahansa, he should hanker after money? He doesn't belong to this place. The Master said, those who are my own will always come here. He used to be angry with somebody, because he was Gopala's constant companion. I think it was Mahapurush Maharaj. And didn't come to the master more often. Gopal has spiritual realization, no doubt. The master said to me, but he has attained them all of a sudden, without the necessary preparations. He is not one of my own. If he is, why haven't I waited for him? Some are proclaiming Gopal as the incarnation of Nityananda. But times without number, the master said to me, in me alone are embedded Advaita, Chaitanya, and Nityananda. I am all these three. So, that day's conversation, Master and Narendranath are over. We shall continue with this. Om. तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जना ॐ शान्ति 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 हरिः ॐ तत्सत् श्रीरामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।